Morning, everybody. So, welcome to Sit, Stay, Proxy, Good Beagle. Why I love the beaglebone black and why you should too. So, who the heck am I? I'm a senior wireless consultant with CDW, as Steve said. I'm doing the network here. Did the network yesterday at ThoughtCon, so you'll see me running around a little bit. Spare time, I brew beer, I play with electronics, and I mangle Python. You can find me _CRV on Twitter. I'm Boo on IRC on Freenode, and if you're a ham, I'm KC8DHY. Or if you want to buy me a beer later, which I do accept, my name's Colin. So let's get into it. What is the beaglebone black? And without really making a big mess of that, I'll put one here. If you guys want to pass that around and take a look at it, it's kind of neat. And then I've got one that I'm going to gesture with. So it is a embedded device, much like a Raspberry Pi. Got an ARM processor, 512 megs of RAM. 2 gigs of onboard storage, a obviously graphics processor, and some microcontrollers. Basic connectivity, much like the Pi. USB client, USB host. We'll talk about the USB host a little bit more later. Ethernet, HDMI in the form of a micro HDMI, and then 2 46-pin headers. So you can see those headers. Let's see if I can get this to go. Right over here. Lots and lots of headers. All the other stuff I mentioned, etc. So you're already saying to yourself, but I already have a Raspberry Pi. Why do I care? Well, let's take a look at the difference. So beaglebone, base price is a little bit more. And the compelling reason that you want to pay that extra $10 is the onboard storage. So with a Pi, you have to buy a flash card. With the beaglebone, you've got 2 gigs on board. The newest Rev C, actually is going up to 4. That's coming out pretty soon, I think. They're working on producing. Same RAM, as I said before, that micro SD is really nice on top of the 2 gig onboard. So you can run the onboard if you want just something lightweight. If you want to do something larger, I usually throw like a 16 or 32 gig on there, and it'll boot right off of that as a secondary boot. Again, micro HDMI. The power draw, you've got a little bit more coming off the beaglebone than the Pi. And depending on the Pi, if you've got the Rev A, you've got less on the board, and there's less power draw. So if you've got some sort of project that you're really looking at power, this might be a better choice. GPIO, though, beaglebone wins, hands down. Lots and lots of pins. I showed you those pin headers before. You can do a lot of configuration on what those actually do and use them for all sorts of great stuff. Versus 8 on the Pi. And then, all the standard USB, et cetera, et cetera. So expandability of the beaglebone versus the Pi. Beaglebone's got something called a cape. It plugs in much like an Arduino right on those headers. Some of the notable ones are CAN bus. CAN bus, if you don't know what it is what a lot of automotive systems run. So you can hack your car. CAN bus is available. Just get the cape, throw it in there, and you're playing with CAN bus. There's also an LCD, and there's actually an Arduino Shield adapter, which I'm not a microcontroller guy, but I'm sure there's a reason that you'd want to plug a microcontroller into an embedded board. Pi has stuff like PiFace and the camera now that's easily available. Beaglebone does have a smaller community base. So I was talking to Video Man yesterday at ThoughtCon, and he was saying, we ran one of these for a robot. We did a Burning Man. It was really cool, but I'll be damned if I can figure out X, Y, Z. So looking at the Pi, you've got a huge community base, which is great. If you want to do that one weird, stupid, esoteric thing, someone else has done it and hopefully written a blog post about it. So who cares, right? Why are we talking about this? Enter the USB Gadget API. This is what I find compelling about this board. What that is a USB to virtual adapter that is cross-platform. And if you look at my little diagram here, I'm awesome at Visio. It is a USB port plugged directly into the Pi, which comes as a virtual Ethernet adapter. So you've got what looks like a network card through the USB cable, and then obviously your wired port here if you want it, or USB for wireless. And again, my little ASCII if you like ASCII, which who doesn't? Let's do our first demo, and hopefully demonstration, not demolition. But I recorded it because this is my first talk ever, so I didn't really want to sacrifice a goat to the demo gods. All right, so we're just going to step through kind of getting this installed. I apologize that the video in the corner is a little small, but I have an old camera. Plug that in, you get a couple blinky lights. Oh, and I sped some of the video up just so you guys didn't have to watch driver installs, which are, you know, ultra thrilling. Comes up as a drive. There's a first partition on the drive. It actually has everything you need on there. It's got all the docks, all the drivers, all the specs. Really, really handy. You don't need to go download stuff. You just plug it in. It comes up as a fat partition, and away you go. I'm throwing in the 32-bit driver as I've got a Windows 7 32-bit box here. It's coming up, and kind of fast forward through this in a second. Unfortunately, the drivers are unsigned. I sent a tweet at them a little while ago. I'm not sure if I can actually find someone at TI to listen to me about it, but that's kind of an irritating thing. So as I mentioned before, all this stuff is on there. The hardware docs, if you want to build yourself a case, you can pull the spec sheet and look at the dimensions. I mean, everything about this board is on the board already. It's fantastic. Fast forward, our install is done. Once you've installed those drivers, rather than just a flash drive, we're now going to see our Linux gadget come up. So in a second here, you'll notice that all of a sudden I have a new network adapter, and it'll say, at least in Windows, it's got a little Linux gadget right there. Tells you what it is, and it comes up with an IP. So out of the box, it's got a point-to-point, and notice I didn't configure it. It's running DHCP, and I'm going to get an address of 192.168.7.2 right there, and 7.1 is the other side, the actual beaglebone itself. Finally, you can get in and you know, secure shell, do whatever you want to do. It's just a regular network. I'm going to skip through this, keep moving. My use cases. So some examples of why I love this thing. Like I said, I'm a network guy, right? That's what I do day in, day out. I use this thing for wired and wireless sniffing. Note that if you use more than one card, you probably want a powered hub. The power draw off of, you know, 3 cards, if you're looking at all 3, 2, 4 channels on the wireless side, it's a little bit much. So go get a cheap powered hub, plug it in, you're good to go. T-Shark, Airmon, TCP dump, whatever your favorite sniffer is. I use services, DHCP, DNS, FTP, etc. I stage and configure switches, wireless. So I need to turn this stuff up in an environment that's not plugged in anywhere yet. So this thing provides everything I need off of that Eth0 device. So I'm on it on my machine. Eth0 is doing all my services. I'm good to go. It also does VLAN tagging. I mean, it's Linux, right? So VLAN tagging is easy. I can make a trunk port, plug my beaglebone in, and sit in 10 different networks at the same time without doing weird routing, natting, any stuff like that. I can just tag traffic. Console server. If you're familiar with switching, routing, a lot of Cisco, etc. devices have a port. You can console in if you have a USB to serial console adapter. Screen knows about it. Those drivers are in the kernel and like 2.4 and beyond for most distros. So out of the box, you're good to go. And then I use Gate 1. So Gate 1 is a web-based terminal emulator, and it exists on the factory beaglebone right out of the box. If you put a different OS on there, like I'm a Debian guy, so I usually put Debian on mine, you do have to install it. But you know, this is the Gate 1 demo page. The developer's got a neat little menu-driven thing that you can kind of play around in. This is the newer installed on my Debian. I've created these little applications so that I can click bash, and I can get a bash shell in my browser. I can click fake DNS. I've got a little script that responds to every DNS query with the IP that I give it. And then here's just bash, right? So uname, fdisk, whatever. It's just a shell in a browser, so you don't actually need to secure shell in if you don't want. Note, I am using SSL, and it has a PAM module, so I'm actually authenticating with my user to get onto that. Scripting platform, like I said, I write horrible Python. Bone script. Node.js library that comes with this. It's kind of a low-level thing. It's akin to Arduino programming, but you can blink all the lights and do all this neat stuff right, again, from the web page on the beaglebone Black, out of the box. Play with the little buttons they've got, turn the LEDs on and off, and there's a whole lot more you can do with it. Bash, Linux, obviously. Ruby, Perl, whatever the cool kids are using. And Jeff gave me crap because I put Ruby below Bash and lumped in with Perl, so committed a cardinal programming sin. VPN and proxying. So secure shell into the beaglebone. Use the -D for dynamic on Linux or SOX proxy in PuTTY. I usually fire up tmux or screen to keep my session going in case I drop for some reason. And then give yourself a network connection to the outside world, Ethernet or WLAN. And then you can sit on multiple networks, right? I've got customers that they give me VPN access, but it's full tunnel. I can't get to the internet or I can't get to my home stuff. So I throw the beaglebone on here. I use VPN-C, OpenConnect, which will do SSL. You could set up a PPTP tunnel, IPsec, OpenVPN, any vendor you can think of that'll work in Linux. You now have a network that you're connected to and the beaglebone out to another network. So adding to that, throw in Foxy proxy, and you've got a way to use a specific browser for that other network. It's got the ability to do regex. So a lot of times, if I know my customer network is 10 whatever, I'll write a regex to take 10 whatever and throw that through the proxy. Everything else, I'm going to apple.com, Reddit, whatever, goes through my network connection. So I can sit in two places at once without really having to worry about which way my traffic's going. So some other use cases. Dropbox, Smartcast, Blackthrow. I mean, you could see this thing. It's not very big, so you could use it like that, you know, phone plug type stuff. Pen testing platform. It's an ARM Linux box. You can put Pen to, you can put Kali. I haven't tried it, but maybe the community version of PwnPlug would run on there. Or roll your own. Print server, APRS for the hams, a 3D printer. There's a cape called the Replicape that actually runs a 3D printer, which is kind of cool. Temperature sensor logging. So I brew beer and I like to watch temperatures. So I made some ugly code this winter and looked at temperatures out on my back porch. See how awesome the winter was here in Chicago? It was, I'm not even sure it's done yet. And then, you know, Tor middling gateway. Let's look at that a little bit. So what's Tor, if you're not familiar? Free software for enabling online anonymity and censorship resistance. I won't read the whole thing. Sorry, it's an eye chart. But Tor is a great thing, and having hardware enforcement makes it pretty easy. So why were we doing that? Well, in theory, there's less leakage. You've got a hardware device dealing with all this rather than your misconfigured client side. There's less configuration from the user side once you have this set up, so I could just plug something else in without having to worry about the Tor browser or, you know, having a Tails box up. Like I said, misconfiguration, less likely. And you can run anything through the hardware, right? Put your wireless scale, put your Xbox through it, you know, stuff, weird stuff that you have at home that's on your wireless, you could pop that through a box doing Tor. And there's a couple implementations. So the Grug's got Portal and Portal Pi. Adafruit actually sells the Onion Pi pack where you have a Pi. I think they have a wireless adapter and then some good instructions on how to do that. PogaPlug has a product called the SafePlug. I haven't really looked into it, but it exists. And TorGuard.net has a bunch of DDWR machines, all sorts of whatever they can shove it on there. They've got one you can buy that's already got Tor stuff enabled. So demo number 2, more demolition. So I ended up writing a bash script just to kind of do a proof of concept on this, this idea that we have a Tor middling box. So I've got a link later, and you can always ask me, but it's all out on GitHub. But the guy who did a lot of these builds, his name's Robert C. Nelson, and I think he's a TI employee, but he keeps up-to-date images of a couple different distros out on the wiki. So I'm starting here by basically using Win32 Disk Imager to take the pre-built image and throw it on a flash drive. Again, this is sped up. I wish it wrote that fast. But it's kind of like DD for Windows. So I don't have to do anything beyond take that image, blow it into this drive, and then plug it in. So you see, there's my flash drive, right? My other career is a hand model. And plug it in and fire it up. It'll automatically recognize that you've got that plugged in there and boot off of that drive rather than boot off the internal. Now I'm just putting in a USB cable and then a network card. And that's pretty much it. You know, it'll come up on my home network. We're taking it as written that the drivers are already installed so that it's going to come up as a nice Ethernet device, and then we're going to be able to configure it. Again, nice little blinky lights. And I've got, this case is kind of nice. It's rugged and it's metal, but it's harder to see the lights. The other one I got there was an Adafruit freebie. I tweeted about a different thing that I did with it, and they sent me a free case, which was really nice. But you can see the lights better in that one. All right, so we're plugged in here. In a second, this guy will come up, and we'll be able to make a connection in. Again, it's going to give us that 192.168.7.2, and you could configure that. It's just a standard config on the Linux box and Debian etc network interface. So again, 7.2, 7.1 is the gateway of the beaglebone. And from here, I can actually get into the box and run my script. So let's fire up PuTTY real quick, or your secure shell session of choice, 192.168.7.2. Robert Nelson's, I did this demo like 25 times, so there's SSH key errors every time. Robert's default login is Debian and temp pwd, so we'll get in that way. Obviously, you want to change that after you set this up. And then we're going to pull down, we'll take a look real quick first. So uname, I'll show you that it's Linux ARM, and then take a look and you'll see that I'm on my home network, nothing fancy, just behind a NAT. And then my USB 0 is the gadget has that 7.2. So now I'm going to grab my repo out of GitHub, clone that real quick. How am I doing on time? So I got a couple pieces up here just about how to grab that image, how to flash it, and then boot with a connection, very basic stuff. I'm lazy, so we're doing this as root. And I'd copy and paste just so that if you really wanted to do this directly how I do it, you could copy and paste, and hopefully this would work for you too. In the repo, it's really just a shell script and a README. So we're going to make that shell script executable, and then we're going to fire it up. And for the most part, it's updating Debian. I'm going to do a removal of the secure shell keys and regen them, just because, you know, it's a good idea. And again, this is all sped up. The logging is ugly. And if you've got any recommendations and want to see this better and have suggestions, please let me know. Email me or fork the project, whatever. But it's got logging to the terminal, and it's got logging to syslog, and it's a little jumbled. But you can go look at the script if you understand what is going on in the bash script. It's pretty easy to figure out. But essentially, it's set up IP tables right, grab the repo for Tor, get that installed, and then do a real basic Tor config. So now that we've got this set up, it's reboot already. And now if you notice here, I've got that 7.2 as a DHCP and DNS and as the gateway. So now my machine sees this as a box that can route traffic. And if you see over here, I don't have any other interfaces installed here, right? So it's just my beaglebone, which is, again, connected to my home connection. And if I hit the check Tor, I'm using Tor now, right through the box. No other connections to the internet. So this guy's doing all the work for me, and my misconfigured, horribly configured Windows machine works. Hit Google, you get the nice little, you're in another country notification. UK. So, it's functional. It's doing its job. Now, I'm not a Tor expert, so there might be some leaks. There's a lot of things you have to consider, Java, browser plugins, etc. But it works. So if you have better suggestions for some of that stuff, please let me know. And that's really it. Thanks to you guys for coming and being here at the first talk. Thanks to Adafruit for carrying the product itself and that free case they got me. Robert C. Nelson for those builds. I got the Tor inspiration kind of a little bit from the Grug. And then thanks to Jeff for mentoring and pushing me to get that Tor demo working. And then here's a couple links. Here's where my GitHub project is. You can get me through Keybase, and I mentioned all my other stuff earlier. Anyone have any questions? I suggest if you really want to take a look at what that script does, hit that, take a look at the source. It's nothing fancy. It's just automated what I typed out. Anyone think of anything? Nope. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Enjoy the con.